All right. In 3, 2, 1, we're back. All right. Let's fast forward to October 2012. And when Gypsy first meets Nicholas Godejohn, they had met on this online website, ChristianDatingForFree.com, which I've never personally visited, but it sounds like I guess if you're looking for a dating website, that would be at the top of the list. I don't know. Gypsy, her options were very limited, but she's looking for, I guess, a Christian man. You hear Gypsy describe it. She says, I was obsessed with Disney princesses, especially Rapunzel. We just talked about Rapunzel. Gypsy had formed the belief that she had found her Prince Charming in Nick. Nick was looking to connect with somebody and was sort of similar to Gypsy in that respect. He functioned. Now, according to his defense attorney, Nicholas Godejohn functioned at about a 15 or 16-year-old level. He was extremely low IQ, and if you would believe his defense attorneys, he did not have the requisite mens rea, or lacked the capacity to form the mens rea, or mental state, to commit first-degree murder. That was the hallmark of their defense. The problem with that is when you listen to him when he's being interrogated by the investigators, it's not that he sounds like he's an articulate man. It's not that he sounds like he's, the most intelligent of people, but he's reasonably intelligent. He's able to have a conversation, and he's carrying on with the detective and speaking just fine. Would I guess from that conversation that he had an IQ below, say, 80, which I believe is the standard for mental impairment? I would not have guessed that from his interview. But if, say, given the benefit of the doubt, back in, I think it was 2018 or 2019 or something like that, or more recently after the interrogation, he gives another interview to a television reporter, basically confessing again to the murders. Yeah, I did it, and this is how it happened, and all this kind of stuff. And he's talking and communicating as if he's a functional adult.
One of the things, I don't know if it was mentioned in the beginning of the documentary, but I think they mentioned that he had Asperger's.
Asperger's,
yeah. I don't know.
Well, he's 100% autistic. He's on the spectrum. Some have quoted Asperger's. That's not really a thing anymore.
Okay.
I've been told, or in my research, but he's on the spectrum somewhere. That's indisputed. The question is, you could be on the spectrum and, immensely intelligent, think Elon Musk, or you could be severely impaired. Where he was somewhere probably in the middle of maybe not exceptional intelligence, maybe not even intelligent, but adequately intelligent. So at least have a conversation that made sense with the detectives to form thoughts and ideas about what happened on the night of the murders, February 10th of 2015. And so I don't believe that he was so impaired that he lacked the capacity to form the intent to commit first-degree murder, because there was clearly plans.
Yeah, I mean, I think he knew what he was doing.
He was a lot more sophisticated than he's been given credit for.
Yes, I agree.
He has this whole fantasy world that he had developed and cultivated online. His whole persona was online. The multiple personalities, Victor, the 500-year-old vampire. He was telling Gypsy stuff about that he wanted to do, and then one of his fantasies was like, you're going to have my baby, and then our child, when she turns 13 years old, I will take her virginity, and that caused he was saying stuff like that. And so he wasn't like this innocent person the way that I was thinking he might have been last week when I really hadn't done much research into Godejohn. He had a criminal record. He's a sex offender, exposing himself in public. He didn't have a violent criminal record, but the things that he was saying in text messages, he was clearly the ringleader in some of it. Gypsy was sort of the cheerleader.
Yes.
was kind of what I gathered from all of that. And, you know, what is the largest animal that you've ever killed?
Insects. I don't
Insects. Okay. What's the
Yeah.
biggest insect that you've ever killed?
Maybe a cockroach. I don't know. I'm a big animal lover, so I even like lizards. So-
I once drowned a rat.
Oh my goodness. I like rats.
Well, it was in my house and I caught it, and then like it fell into like this. It fell
trap?
into Well, it was in the trap, but then I didn't know how to dispatch it, and so I
Oh my
drowned it,
goodness.
and I felt like so. Oh, it was.
Yes.
I felt like a horrible person, you know. But it's difficult to kill things.
It is. Oh, I killed once what is it called? Pollito.
A bojito?
A little chicken, like a baby chicken.
You killed a
A
little.
chick.
You
I guess.
killed a chicken.
By accident.
How dare you?
I gave the little chicken banana peels, and I guess they cannot eat that. And
Oh,
he died.
yeah.
That's the only thing that I felt horrible afterwards, but not on, like, I've never done it on purpose other than insects.
I once tried to nurse a baby bird back to health. It
Oh,
had obviously fallen out of his nest. I found it in the grass, like, oh, this poor thing. I didn't know that you're just supposed to leave it there because the mom was going to go get it.
Yep.
Nope. I took it into the house and I tried to feed it like ham in like water. I was like shoving its beak into the water. It's like,
Oh my
drink, little fella. And then
God.
it just had passed away. And
Poor
I
thing.
felt horrible about it. But I was a kid, you know. It's difficult to kill things.
It is.
There's no dispute.
If you have a conscience and you understand.
If you have a conscience. There is no dispute by law enforcement, his defense attorneys, or anybody else that Nicholas took a knife, that little tiny jagged knife that Gypsy had stolen from him at a Walmart, put on those gloves, snuck into their house, and stabbed Dee Dee Blanchard 17 times, nearly severing her head from her body. I don't think I could personally do that if it wasn't like I'm defending like my wife or my daughters or something.
And the way that he described, like when he was being interviewed, like, oh yeah, one of them, I felt that it went through the lung because it was hard to remove the knife back.
Yeah.
And the way that he said it, so like as
Calculatingly.
and like as if he's talking about something very, I don't know, about what he ate in the morning.
I don't fault him so much for that though, because one of the marks of autism
Yes,
is
the
that
emotions.
you lack the emotional effect.
Yes.
And so I give him the benefit of the doubt for that. But even considering it takes a lot to get a person to do something like that to anybody,
Yes.
let alone a woman that you're stronger than and that is weaker than you. And then I couldn't even imagine. It takes a certain level of mindset, a certain level of mentality. He claimed, oh yeah, I have this side of me. It's Victor. He kind of like described it. It's like, yeah, I'm a normal guy, but every now and then Victor wants to come out and do evil things. And so that's not unique. That's not a symptom of his autism. That is something that is inherent within his psychology, separate and apart from autism or whatever.
Yes.
However you want to, I don't know if I'm even qualified to say that, but he clearly formed that plan. He clearly formed that persona, and he clearly carried out the act. If I put the knife into Gypsy's hand, could she have done the same thing?
I don't think so.
Well, we do know this. There was the BB gun incident.
Yes.
Remember?
So she tried. Yeah.
She picked it up. She didn't know it was a BB gun, but she picked up and just started firing that sucker. But shooting somebody is a lot different than murdering somebody with your hands with a knife. That is not over quickly. There's a lot of screaming. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of blood.
It's a lot more personal.
A lot more personal. Like you're looking in that person's eyes. She's standing a distance away. It's not the same level of monstrosity to kill somebody in that regard. She had it. She 100% had it in her and 100% formed the plan to murder her mom. There's no, she admits it. She just Matter of fact, do you recall that video where she's making the stabbing motion?
Yes.
So she makes this video for Nicholas. It's like, here's the whole outline of the house. And this is how you're going to get in. And this is my mom's room. And then as she's standing over her mom's bed, she makes the stabbing motion and she tries to justify it and say that, oh, well, I was on pain medications. I was high as F. And, I didn't know what I was doing, but hey, that's that. When her defense attorney saw it, her defense attorney saw that. And when he said, when I saw that, my heart just dropped, because we had at once this young girl that was victimized, Munchausen by proxy and all the thing. And now she's making stabbing motions. What is her level of involvement? How are we going to defend her from this? At that point, there was no defense, but she had gained a significant amount of sympathy from the public. And, the chances are the DA did not want to take the chance of trying to prosecute her for second-degree murder and running the risk that she has a sympathetic jury that finds her not guilty. And so she pleads to 10 years in prison. And I thought that was fair. I mean, she's out now. She served 8 years of it.
8. Mm-hmm.
But there was certainly a part of Gypsy that was able to form those thoughts. But the way that she describes the murders is extremely heartbreaking. I mean, she had severe remorse as it was happening. She didn't want it to happen. Let's talk about that. Let me continue before I get too far ahead of myself. So she's describing her relationship with Nick and how it kind of developed and how they're talking. They had formed this plan that they were going to meet up at a theater. They were going to play, they're going to this Cinderella.
Yes,
the new Cinderella. Mm-hmm. Hey, Dominic, last time you flashed like this graphic of the old Cinderella. And I was like, that's not the Cinderella they were talking about. I'm surprised they didn't get a comment about it. The new Cinderella. It was the new Cinderella. Whatever came out in 2015. I feel like I took my daughter to see that movie back in 2015, but it was like a non-cartoon version of it, or I don't know, some kind of Disney movie. I feel like I don't know. But they go to see this movie, and the plan was, oh, it'll be like we never met. And all of a sudden we met and we're making friends and everything. We don't have to hide anything. And there was new details that came out about this. So they go, and the plan was she was going to lose her virginity. She makes a motion to her mom, I go to the restroom. She meets Nicholas in this bathroom stall. And the way that she describes it was, I've never seen a penis before other than my grandfather's. Mm-hmm. And I won't get into too much of that, but yes. We had alleged that she was sexually abused by a grandfather. I believe her. Grandfather denies it, whatever.
As soon as grandfather put the blame on her,
yep.
I was like, you're guilty.
He had the weirdest reaction. Is like, well, if anything, she came out on me, is basically what he said.
As soon as he said that, it's like, okay.
Guilty AF.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's what they do. They put the blame on the other person and become the victim all of a sudden. Like,
he reminds me of the guy that I pled to, the guy I told you about that gave that little girl AIDS. He reminds me of that guy. 100% he did that. But she says, oh, I've never seen a penis before. And then she says it was disgusting. He couldn't get erect. They couldn't even really perform the act. So I don't even know if she actually lost her virginity.
She said that she didn't, but that she considered that she did.
Oh, she called it. We're just going to call it that.
Yeah, she called it, but it didn't happen.
You're right. That is what she said. Mm-hmm. But that's not the way it had been described ever prior to that. And which is, I guess, that's.
But can you imagine this girl that her only reference to like the sexual world, it's Cinderella, and whatever this guy Nick has been telling her about what he likes, like she was probably so lost in that moment, like what was happening and what was actually what. Like, I can't.
Well, she had this weird ability to just kind of let things go.
Yes.
Like, okay, she's ignoring all of the bad parts because she wants to force the good parts. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? She has this pathway that she wants to take. And Nicholas is like, hey, we're going to get married and we're going to have a child. And when she turns 13, I will take that child's virginity. She's like, no, I break up. And then 3 months later, it's like, okay, I forgive you. You're my Prince Charming. And just this weird ability to disassociate and redefine things in her life. But that was her experience. And it didn't go the way that she had planned. But worse for her was that her mom didn't approve. Nicholas was weird. He had tried to make conversation with Dee Dee. And the thing that he wanted to talk about was the weather or something.
Yes.
And then like Gypsy's like, seriously, you couldn't think of anything better than that. And she almost called him dipshit when she said, I felt like, I don't know, but that was her recounting of it. He had this weird statement that he wanted her to repeat. He had this controlling way about him. And so their dialogue, it was fun. It was about a fantasy world that we had created together. It was a way out of my reality. And when I was home with my mom, we would argue. When she'd catch me on the PC, she had scheduled more surgeries and medications. She's still continuing with this Munchausen things. Like, Jesus, they removed this girl's salivary glands. They wanted to get a surgery to fix her vocal cords because of her high-pitched voice. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I mean, it's hard for me to judge high-pitched voices because I tell my wife she sounds like a pterodactyl. And like my daughter, Evelyn, is like a pterodactyl junior. Olivia has a little bit of bass in her voice. She's more like her dad.
But how does a pterodactyl sound like? I don't know.
Like, wah, 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 you know.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Like, or not you're right. How does a pterodactyl? An eagle then? I don't know. A bird? She sounds like a bird.
Okay.
But whenever she's like yapping at me, it's like, oh, Jesus. It's like I'm at the freaking zoo.
I think that's probably the sentiment of most husbands when their wives are like yapping.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's so like grating. It's like, God, why you got to be so mean? You're not being mean. It's just your voice. Like you could sound like there's a deep voice that could sound mean and scary. And then there's this grating, high-pitched voice like the wicked stepmother. She didn't have a deep, a screechy voice, but when men hear voice, that's how it sounds. It's like this high pitch. My daughter has it so bad. She's like miniature pterodactyl.
Oh my goodness.
Oh. Olivia is not that way. Olivia, she's got a deeper voice, like kind of a more, she got more bass in her voice. But she's more manipulative than her sister is. Oh. So they got their own personalities.
Oh no, but I have had friends that have really high pitched voices, but I never really questioned why. I just thought they were like that, and apparently there could be a reason why people talk like that. Like I have
one of the hallmarks,
like they talk like Gypsy or worse, like really like a little girl and super high pitch, like to the point where my husband is like, how can their husbands like be with that voice all day?
Well, but a high-pitched voice like that is a sign of trauma.
Oh.
Matter of fact, in many cases, it's a sign of sexual abuse. Oh. And I don't know if, Gypsy was clearly sexually abused.
Yes.
But I had a client once. She was an exotic dancer. And she had this very childlike Marilyn Monroe voice. And at the time I had learned through another case I had that an expert witness had said that one of the hallmarks of sexual trauma is that you grow up and you maintain this childlike high-pitched voice. It's like, oh, that makes so much sense because that particular client that I had been through so many things in her life. I felt really heartbroken for her, for her story. So my wife doesn't have a high-pitched voice like that. It's not a childlike high-pitched voice. It's just a pterodactyl. She's a pterodactyl. She's a,
oh my goodness.
She's an animal, an eagle. She's a bird. I was making fun of her the other day because, when she lays in bed, like she has like this pillows, like she makes like this nest for herself. It's like, so you're going to go up there and sit in your nest then? It's like, yeah, okay.
Yes. My husband calls it the Muralla China, the Chinese wall.
The Chinese wall?
Yes, because
the Great Wall of China?
Yes, that. Because I have so many pillows, and especially through the pregnancy, like I had all these pillows, and I create kind of like this fort, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're all just around me. And they're like, okay, you're gonna go to your little fort.
Yeah, I do that sometimes when I don't want to get sick because she's always getting sick. And when she gets sick, then I get sick. And it's like, no, you're not breathing on me tonight. And so I'll put like a little pillow fortress on my
hate
bed.
to say that if you're in the same room.
I know how it works. I know how it works. I know it's not working out. It's just psychologically, maybe it'll work out.
I know.
But okay. So before I get too far off track. So Nicholas and Gypsy, it doesn't work out with their mom. He had this way of, so here's Gypsy. She's starving for affection. She's starving for something other than her mom.
Still, she still is.
And here's Nicholas ready to do whatever it is that she's missing. He's delivering it. But he's very controlling. Every time they get off the phone or sign off on online communication or whatever, he wants her to say, I love you and adore you, my king charming. Good night. It's like, that is so creepy. If my wife told me anything like this, like, WTF is wrong with you? It's like, what are you on? It's like, what that would just creep me out to the max. But they have this whole BDSM thing going on, and it's just, I don't understand it. If that's your thing, all the more power to you. But this is kind of how, it was just his thing. He wanted to be seen as like this perfect thing that was the only thing sustaining and maintaining Gypsy when she was with her mom. And then the way that Gypsy describes it, I couldn't really see what was happening. He was my hero. I had villainized my mom. I did not see the connection in their behaviors, the connection being mom is controlling, Nicholas is controlling. She's attracted to that sort of thing. She's been conditioned to be attracted to that sort of thing. And I would argue that her current husband, I was telling my wife, that effing guy.
Yes.
Red flags, domestic violence, abuse, controlling,
yes.
jealousy. Jesus Christ. Could she have just like stayed single for like a couple of years out of prison and date around and see like all the different guys that are out there?
Or like the stepmother suggested, yes, you can continue dating him, but
Keep
you don't
dating
have
him.
to marry him. Like you can just leave prison, I don't know, start dating like normal couples do. Like they're not one in prison, and then if it works, great, you can get married later. But this whole getting married before she leaves, I find it like as a controlling measure by him, where once you leave, you're married.
I was thinking like all the time, like, oh, she's going to wear these khaki pants. She can't wear a dress. Like, hey, dipshit, you could just wait until she gets out of prison and then have the whole ceremony. What's the rush? She ain't going anywhere. You know where she's at. And then that, red flag number 2. And then, he's heavy set. He's extremely heavy set. He's not an attractive man. And I don't know the standard for attractive men, but the attractive men that I imagine is not that guy.
I mean, he's not horrible,
but he's extremely here's my thought.
He's big, but there's people that don't mind that. But I think compared to Gypsy is pretty. I find her pretty. So I don't know. I guess
here's my biggest concern. There's nothing wrong with how he looks. There's nothing wrong with how he looks. But he's very clearly insecure about it.
Oh, he is. Yes.
He has insecurity issues out the wazoo. And he's like deathly jealous of her ex-boyfriend, who's like this skinny, tall white guy from what I could see in the pictures.
I think it was.
Yeah, he's very insecure about whether or not Gypsy's going to stay loyal to him. And he already looks like he's tipping like the scales at about 380. He doesn't look healthy.
No, he does not.
Like he might not be around for the next 10 years if he doesn't do something about himself. And whatever that's got to be, I don't know, but he does not look healthy, and it's only downhill from here, buddy. And so I'm just reading insecure. He knows that he's not the most attractive. He's not unattractive, but he's not secure in himself to see that. He talks to Gypsy in a certain way. He has no problem raising his voice to her, no problem using profanity at her. Been talking to her in this domineering tone, and a lot of that is fueled by his insecurities, domestic violence.
Yes.
And we deal with these cases all the time. And what is one of the hallmarks of domestic violence. One of the biggest motivators of domestic violence, jealousy. The marriage is falling apart. Who were you talking to? Who you been with? Where have you been? It's always something tied to that. We find Apple tags super glued underneath the car.
Apple tags. There's some things it's like, oh, this case.
Yeah. We've had cases like that though. But these are the hallmarks. I was telling my wife, this guy scares me for Gypsy. Yes. Why don't she just like take a few years and just figure it out, man? She's gonna have plenty of suitors. She presents herself as an attractive young woman, but with the baggage of being convicted of second-degree murder. But also, her new husband is the kind of guy that would write somebody in prison and fall in love with somebody who's in prison.
I was gonna say that. Like, I know there's a whole community of
people
that like they correspond with people in jail.
Christopher Watts, the guy we're about to do another show on.
Yeah.
Well, that's what everybody voted for. It was either that or the there was a number. We did a poll.
Okay.
People want Christopher Watts.
Christopher Watts.
And whether or not Nicole Kessinger is guilty of murder.
Okay.
We're going to talk about that next week or kind of a couple of weeks. But yeah, there's a whole community of people that write to these people in prison and like fall in love with them. And I don't understand the psychology.
Exactly. There's something missing in their lives that they cannot create a relationship with someone that is out and free in, I guess, in the world.
Yeah.
And they have to seek those people that are in prison. And that's, I don't know what it is, but yes, there's something weird in there. And like I said, this guy, he's not horrible. He's not missing any limbs. He's not missing like an eye. I've seen people that look worse and they're able to find somebody to like partner with. I think this guy has some skeletons in the closet, and that's why he resorts to looking at love or for love in prison. Like
red flag, it's just if Gypsy was my daughter, but hey, I know you love this guy. I know that.
Now that they mentioned that the dad is like, if you want to get married, just go do it. And it's like, God.
I would be like, hey, if he ever raises his voice, if he ever talks to you sideways, if he ever puts his hands on you, let me know. And I will bring myself and the family army and we will come down and rain hellfire upon this young man. I don't know how old he is, but
he looks like maybe
35-ish or so.
I was going to say late 30s.
About her age.
Maybe 40, yeah.
About her age, maybe a little older, but we're so far off track. We're going out of order. It doesn't matter. So, Nicholas Godejohn, the BDSM finish. Gypsy describes it. It made me feel empowered to be submissive to him, which is a weird psychological dynamic that I don't understand. She said that she felt that he was a very disturbed person who created his own fantasy world. She said that. So she had recognized early on, if you believe her prison interviews, that he was disturbed, clearly the fantasy world, but she didn't see it. I mean, we're able to view it from 20,000 feet. I feel like she was kind of in the forest, blinded by the trees and the leaves and the branches and all.
The bubble.
The bubble. She confides into a friend that she had met this guy, Alea Woodmansey. She was on the 2018 documentary.
That's the neighbor?
I forget if it was a neighbor or if it was a family friend, but it was somebody that she would confide in. Alea Woodmansey, who had no idea, by the way, that they were basically the same age at the time, but she was confiding Alea and Gypsy because she thought that Gypsy was like 15. But she was confiding in her with respect to Nicholas, that she and Nick had discussed eloping and even choosing names for potential children. And then Alea's like, hey, pump the brakes. Maybe not so much. Maybe not so quick. Either way, Alea tries to talk her out of it. She believes that she had been taken advantage. She thought that Nicholas was a sexual predator. Nicholas was just this autistic guy that operated at a very base level. I don't want to say he was below average IQ. He's probably average. He was a child. He created a whole online fantasy. I've met people like this that were not autistic with average intelligence that their only frame of reference is what this online persona that they've created and had nothing to do with their mental deficiencies.
Yes, exactly.
And so if you want to use that as a hallmark for he lacked sufficient IQ, I disagree. So in early 2015, Gypsy, that early in 2015 is basically when they met. We talked about how they met and they go and it doesn't work out with Mom. Interestingly, Mom at this point, she takes out a durable power of attorney. What do you know about those, Ileana?
Well, I don't do them.
Come on, super lawyer. What WTF? Tell me about durable power of attorneys. I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I don't do them. I know a lot of people that don't want to deal with an attorney. They tend to get those with a notary.
It's just
a power to somebody else.
If somebody lacks capacity, it gives them the authority to act as their agent, acting in their best interest and all those things. And it usually becomes the focal points for probation. What am I thinking of? Probate trials.
Probate, yes.
Probation, Jesus. Probate trials. Yeah. Undue influence and all those kinds of things. But Gypsy was trying to take out a durable power of attorney in the name of Gypsy to basically control all of her affairs. Here's where it starts to get a little bit weird.
That kind of makes me think she probably did that because if she went through a conservatorship, then there was going to be a third party doing an investigation, and I
feel like that was coming. You're right. You're right.
I know, like they ask you, like, what have you done in these cases to not have to do a conservatorship, like the least restrictive type of help, and power of attorney is one of them.
Right.
But I'm thinking she probably was trying that because I don't know if she was going to be able to hold, I don't know if the interviewer was going to do a deep investigation to realize like, there's something weird in here to grant the conservatorship. I don't know.
Well, if they may have been trying to go the conservatorship route. I don't know if it was going to get that far. I think she just wanted to be able to continue to cash her SSI checks.
Yes.
But at that point, Gypsy's like, I'm never going to get out of this. I'm never going to get out. She doesn't like Dan. She doesn't like Nicholas. She's going to keep me trapped here in this wheelchair forever. I know for a fact this is a medical fraud. I don't need to be in this wheelchair. She's getting frustrated. I want to be an adult. I want to live my own life. All of these things. So at this point, she starts to converse with Nicholas. They start to form the plan. Hey, babe. He says, I will protect you from anyone. These are the text messages. A short transcript of them. And she says, anyone? Yes. Even my mother? Yes. And then he starts talking about fantasies of murder and rape and crime. And then she tells him, or he tells her about Victor, the 500-year-old vampire. Victor loves to kill and would kill my mother, kill her mother for her, so they could be together. And then he says, dear, never underestimate his will to kill. And also, give me your address so I make sure I have the right one. They're formulating this plan to murder Dee Dee. He directs her to do research about ways to commit the murder. And then they talk about maybe we could buy a gun. And then he says, no, that's too loud, far too loud. And then they formulate the plan. What about a knife? Oh, perfect. We settle as the knife is the weapon. So she steals a knife from Walmart. And then she starts talking about in her documentary, I thought about cutting myself. She says, I was a scared little girl. I was trapped. I was trying to get out of a bad situation. Here's what I felt about her prison confessions. I've talked many times on the show about Alan Watts and Jordan Peterson. And one of the things that they have in common is if you ever want to experience true freedom in life, then tell the truth. Live in the truth. Bathe yourself in the lake of truth, and the truth shall set you free. And I very much felt like in the prison interviews that she was, I feel like, you know what? Screw it. I've already been convicted. I'm serving my sentence. They can't do anything more to me, so I'm just going to let it all out. I really feel like her prison interviews is her greatest moment of candidness, where she has nothing to lose. She's telling the complete truth. I really feel like she's never been more credible than her most recent documentary series in these prison interviews that they did with Lifetime or whatever it was. And so,
she seemed very, very genuine about everything that she was saying.
She's not going to get penalized for this. She doesn't have to make up stories. She already testified to all this stuff back in 2018 at Godejohn's trial. And so there's no reason for her to lie. She's literally just trying to work on herself. She's being truthful about her situation. She wants to find a way to live a normalized life as an adult female. And here we are. She says, I was a scared little girl. I was trapped in a bad situation. I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known that I didn't have to commit this crime. Had I asked a responsible person to commit murder, if I would have asked a responsible person to commit this murder, he would have said, no, stupid. No, stupid. We're not doing that. All right. We're not doing that. We'll call the authorities. We'll do something else. Says if I would have confided in a friend, they would have talked me out of it. But I was talking to Nicholas, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm Victor, the vampire. I will slay your mother in your honor, and we'll live happily ever after. But that was her cards. That's what she had to work with. Nick said in text messages that he wanted her mom to suffer as much as possible. That is an involuntary that is a voluntary statement that was not prompted by anything that Gypsy said. There's no reason to make her suffer. That was Victor, his alter ego, or was it just Nicholas Godejohn?
And I remember also that she mentioned, I don't know if it was in this Lifetime documentary or the previous one, where she says that he wanted to rape her mother.
Yeah.
And she said, you know what, just rape me instead of her.
I was about to get to that. Yeah.
So
there was going to be a rape of somebody, either your mom or you. What's it going to be? And then Gypsy's like, it's not going to be my mom, so it's just going to be me. Yeah. That's just how it played out. So he was clearly a guy with these demons. He had access to evil in his brain. If you want to describe it as he had a demon living inside him by the name of Victor, then fine. But it came from him. It was manifested by him, and Gypsy might have cultivated it, but that was 100% him. He's responsible for what he did. A guy that has the ability to sever the head of a female, innocent or not, has the capacity to do such a thing. I struggle to say it because he was a child at the time, but I mean, gosh, I could not have done that at 17. Most people I know could not have committed that murder at 17 years old.
I don't know, because it's not really mentioned in this last documentary that I watched, but I still haven't heard anybody talk about Nick's parents, like, because apparently he lived with his mom.
Yeah.
What did she know about him and his tendencies? And
that's kind of the look. Nobody's doing a documentary about Nicholas. You know, everybody's doing it about Gypsy. Nobody's telling his story, and so I reserve a lot of judgment that I have for him. There's not a lot of information out there, unless we're going to go and interview his parents ourselves, which you and I both don't have time to do any of that. But I haven't found anything in respect to that would shed any light on the situation. But Nicholas had whatever was bubbling inside of him was born from him, and he added it to Gypsy. Gypsy cultivated it. She couldn't shut it down herself, and it happened. And so the plan, he wanted to murder her and dump her in an abandoned farm where pigs would eat the body. They came out of his mouth in the text messages. Logical. Lots of plans have worked out like that. There was a very famous movie made about, oh yeah, we'll just leave the body on the shores of the Florida swamps and the gators will dispose of the body. Yeah, it didn't work out. They found the body. Guy was convicted. I forget the name of the case. Don't want to get off track. And then he talks about he wanted to rape her with me by his side. I was frightened about that. He told me that Victor had rituals that he wanted to be done. If he had a daughter on her 13th birthday, he would take her virginity. And then at that point, that's when she dumped him. And then a few days later, he messaged me on Facebook. He said, I didn't mean it. It was just Victor. And then she takes him back, which is how I'm getting to this conclusion that she had this weird capacity to just overlook things because she wanted so, I mean, if it's
She
not,
wanted to be free.
if it's not Nicholas, who? Like, what are other prospects? You know, I mean, it's hard to judge her view on her prospects, but I feel like you could have just moved on to another profile on Christian singles for free or whatever it was. She could have, I mean, I don't know, man, but Nicholas was the guy that she chose. And she was so childlike in her behavior. The only time that she felt cunning and manipulative and able to participate and defend herself was in this fantasy world. The second it becomes real, she's still childlike because she's a child. It's like, hey, I'm the master of the universe and I'm He-Man and I'm the Incredible Hulk and I'm going to slay them. I'm the strongest man in the world until you get beaten up by the bull and it's like, Mom, I need your help. I remember one time I climbed up I was Superman, I was Batman or whatever. I climbed up into this tree and I was a little bit too high up and I was deathly scared of heights and I didn't know that. And I was like, I'm not coming down off of this tree. You can't make me move. And then it's like, you have to come down off of the tree. It's like, you will call the fire department. They will get a ladder and they will rescue me.
Oh my God.
And then you know who came to my rescue? My mom. And she came. It's like, son, get out of that tree right now. Okay.
Oh. At least you didn't fall down or throw yourself. My brother had this friend in like first or second grade that he believed he was Superman and he decided he was going to fly. And he had like broken ribs, the collarbone, I guess.
Broke his collarbone, yeah.
Yeah, he broke it. It was a whole mess. The kid was hospitalized for the longest time. And I was like, really? Like, nobody told this kid, poor thing, that, yes, not true. Like, I mean.
Kids do a lot of stupid things. My brother did that when he thought he was Mary Poppins. I will jump from the roof with this umbrella. He didn't break anything. He was fine, but he was an idiot. I was an idiot. We're all idiots. It was our childhood, and it was what it was. So let's fast forward to the crime. They're clearly coming up with this crime, with this plan to dispose of Dee Dee. It's her only way out. It's either this or I'm going to be in prison forever. Gypsy feels I only got two options. Either she's going to get pregnant with Nicholas's baby, and and Dee Dee has no choice but to accept as the father of her child, Nicholas, or she's going to just have to kill her. That in her mind was her only two ways out. Gypsy takes hundreds of dollars from Dee Dee to pay for transportation for Nicholas to Springfield. The plan was he was going to get a bus from Springfield to Gypsy's house. He's going to sneak her in. She was going to pay for everything. She was going to help him out. She had provided him with a knife, with gloves, with duct tape that she had stolen from Walmart. It was initially believed that she had purchased it, but she admitted that she stole that stuff, which makes more sense, I guess. I don't know if it makes more sense or not, but that's what she said. On June 10th, 2015, Gypsy Rose texted Nick, "The bitch gonna go down tonight. Just the gloves and knife?" Nick responded, "Duct tape too, to muffle her." So they're carrying out this plan. It's in motion. A Gypsy said she was going to pre-cut the tape. Nick arrived at the house. Gypsy let him in. And then she hides in the bathroom, her hands over her ears. Here is Gypsy's account. "So I woke up that day next to my mom. I messaged Nick. He was already on the bus. My mother and I, we had a moment. Nick told me that I should tell her that I love her. So that's what I was planning on doing. And then I gave her a big hug. And I remember her telling me, 'What's that for? I'm not dead yet.' She was going to be dead in like 4 hours. Part of me didn't want to go through with it. She went into Dee Dee's room. I hugged her pillow and had her scent on it. And after that, we started watching a movie. And about 2 hours later, Nick texted me that he's at the hotel. My mom had fallen asleep. I texted him. She's sleeping very light. If she wanted to stop it, she didn't. She's continuing with the plan. He took a cab over to my house. He arrives at the house. He texts her, I'm here, and you get your ass to the bathroom and you open the door. And she does. The first thing he tells me upon entering is that bitch is dead. Hearsay. This is her recount.
Yes.
And then he says, get your effing ass in the bathroom right now. I get down on the ground, I cover my ears, and I hear her wake up. And I hear screaming and banging. It stopped for a moment. I uncovered my ears, and that's when I hear her call my name. Gypsy, help me. Repeated a couple of times. And to this day, I can't get that thought out of my head. I want to help her, but I don't. I just sit there and I hear her screaming again. And there was one sharp scream, and then it was over. It was silence. I didn't hear anything. I'd do anything to go back in that moment of time. There were so many moments in time that I wish I could go back to. There was still a point where she didn't have to die, and I wish I could stop it. And she didn't. This is her words. This is her recount. The sharp scream and then the silence, that's basically her vocal cords being cut. Nick comes into the bathroom. He's holding a knife. There's blood coming from his finger. He'd cut himself, stabbing her. Dee Dee, 17 times. He tells me to clean up. He tells me the whole time. He never takes his eyes off of me. At the time, I was completely disassociated with what was happening. These are Gypsy's words. It was like a bad dream. Nick commanded me to be naked. And the command that because I didn't let him rape my mother, I had to agree to let him rape me. So the story that Dee Dee told was Gypsy told.
Mm-hmm.
He raped me after everything was done. He commanded me to get rid of the stuffed animals off the bed, and he raped me. Nicola was like, yeah, and afterwards we had sex. The two diverging viewpoints from one perspective and from the other. Gypsy continues. He told me to take all the stuffed animals off the bed. He was going to have sex with me. And never once was it a fantasy to me. When I yelled, stop, he didn't. I called for my mother, who was already murdered. After he was basically choking her as he was doing this. She blacked out. She claims that she blacked out for a little bit because he was choking me. And when I came to, he told me to get ready. I called a cab. We left the house. I get to the hotel. I was a little frightened that someone had seen me, but I was wearing a wig. I'm taking pain medications to get high, to disassociate. This was her coping mechanism. I'm in a state of shock. I don't believe any of that happened. That was my frame of mind. The next day, we're supposed to leave for Wisconsin. There was no ticket available for 2 days, so we stayed at a hotel. I stayed high on my pain pills. I imagine she probably took some from Dee Dee from the cabinet. She says, I enjoyed being with Nick. She said they thought it would be funny to make a porn video. Yeah, we're talking about brownies and pizza. There was a roller coaster of emotions between happiness and grief. I missed my mom. I wish she was here. And when we got on the bus, it was so exciting. I felt like I was winning a trip to Hawaii. I had my camera. I was looking outside the window. I was taking pictures. I was so hopeful for the future. I had stolen $5,000 from my mom's safe. I thought that would be the money that we would live off for the rest of our lives. That's like, that's a mortgage payment. Jesus. I began thinking a little more about my situation. I could see that he's not that independent as a man as I thought I would be living with. He had a small room in the upstairs lift. It looked like a 15-year-old boy's room. He had a wrestling comforter on his bed. Freaking Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. Her knight in shining armor is a boy.
Yep.
So after arriving at Nick's house, she says it wasn't freedom. She said he was very controlling, predictably. She says that he would pick out what she would wear, what she would watch, what she would eat, just like her mom did. And then she starts thinking, did I really just trade in my life with my mom for life with this effing guy? This is what I traded. This is what we went through all of that for. And she talks about the Facebook post. She had tremendous remorse and guilt that had started to surface. The idea of her mom being dead in her bed and no one knowing. She wanted her mom to be found. And so she decided to post on Facebook something from their shared account. Her and her mom shared a Facebook account. She said, what should I post? And then she thought about what Nick had said. The bitch is dead. And then a second post, because family members were they started speculating that the Facebook account was hacked. Like, if someone put that on your Instagram account,
yes,
I wouldn't initially think you were hacked. I would call, okay,
something's going on.
I got to get a hold of your husband. What is that about? That's weird. Was she hacked or something else? But people are speculating, okay, hacked. So they're waiting for some kind of a follow-up, but it wasn't coming. So she posted a second post to Facebook. I effing slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet and innocent daughter. Her scream was so effing loud. LOL. And she says, I felt that would alarm people. Alan Voss, the Greene County Sheriff's Department investigator, was alerted by the Facebook post. And then he said that after being alerted to these posts, they go to the Blanchard home. Detectives searched the home. They found Dee Dee murdered in her bedroom, obviously. They also found Gypsy's wheelchair that she had needed all the time. It was still at the residence. And the initial theory was that, okay, she must have been abducted. Clearly that wasn't the case.
No.
You know? And it was kind of a shock when they found Gypsy at the house. If you recall that story, they roll up on Nicholas's house and they say, Nicholas Godejohn, come out with your hands up. And, you know, Gypsy is she's hearing all of this. And then they instruct her to come out. She's walking out and they're like, what?
What is this?
It shifted the course of their investigation, to say the least. The prison interviews, Gypsy and Nicholas separated. They were in there for about 4 hours before they actually questioned Gypsy. They caught wind of Nicholas's story. I'd imagine they had already gone through all of her cell phone, whatever communication, Facebook communications, whatever. They knew that, hey, this is not, she was abducted. She was involved in this. And so she goes through this whole story. I didn't know. First, she tried to play it off. I didn't know my mom was dead. And then it was like, oh my God, it was all Nicholas's fault. And I was like, okay, here's what really happened. 3 versions of the same story. I can't imagine being a part of that investigation and having to go through all of that. I'd imagine that if I had known what I had known back in 2015 about her being in a wheelchair, I would have been like losing my mind. And, you know, so thrilled. Oh, we found her. She's safe. What? She can walk? What? And just, it would have thrown me for such a loop. I could only imagine the investigators, what they were thinking. But, you know, at this point, Gypsy's like, all right, the jig is up. She just lets it all out. She lets it all out. She pleads guilty to second-degree murder. The minimum sentence for second-degree murder in that state, Wisconsin, 10 years.
Yes, 10 years.
She pled to the minimum possibility of parole after 8. As soon as she got that deal, jumped on it because she was literally facing life in prison. And her defense attorney was like, hey, I saw that video of the stabbing. And I'm like,
yes. That's exactly how I go whenever a client, I'm given some evidence that is contrary to my client's version. It's like, oh.
How many moments have you had like, oh, I've had so many. So the prosecution had reasoned. There was so much sympathy that's going to come out from this girl because there was a horrific case of child abuse that had taken place where she was clearly a victim of Munchausen by proxy. If you want to leave comments down below, I welcome your arguments about she was not a victim. One person left a comment like that, says she was clearly not a victim. There was other stuff, she was lying and things like that. The uncontroverted evidence suggests otherwise. And I'd love to know the reasons why you disagree with that. But at the very least, whatever you think about the medical conditions and the stuff that was going on with the doctors and the very real prospect that the doctors were in on the fraud, hey, I'm all for that. But 100% Dee Dee, from the time that she was 4 or 5 years old to the time that she murdered her mom, was a victim. She was a Munchausen victim. 100%. I'm convinced of that. And she is the public was catching on to that. All of these stories were starting to come out. It was the greatest shock to law enforcement and her family members and her dad and her stepmom and everybody that knew Gypsy when they saw the video of her walking into court. Like, WTF?
She walks.
What? It was this bombshell at the time. And everybody was thrown for a loop with all of that. And well, what do we do now? I mean, you got to recalibrate your thoughts about who is a gypsy, what was really going on. Everybody recalibrates. And so rather than go through the trial and risk having her be acquitted because of the jurors' sympathy, the DA says, plead to the minimum, second-degree murder, we'll be done with it. That's it. Done. Later in 2018, she testifies on behalf of Godejohn, and she kind of fesses up to her role in the murders and talks candidly about that. The whole defense for Godejohn was basically he was autistic. He lacked the requisite ability to form the intent to basically plan and carry out a first-degree murder. That was just destroyed at every angle. Although the jury did deliberate for 4 days, so they were on the fence with it. But I feel like what really did him in when they were able to see the video of him talking to the investigators, and when they were able to see the video of him a few years later, basically telling the same story to some TV journalist, reporter. Mm-hmm. And there's like, yeah, this guy's first degree, no possibility of parole. He's in prison to this day. He's since requested a new trial. He's since requested a bunch of things. Of There's a lot of stuff. We're not going to get to all of the things about Nicholas today. But from last week to this week, as I have dived into this case, I did this whole segment about autism and how the spectrum and how autistic people are misunderstood. I mean, how my daughter was diagnosed and all of these things. But he is not as dumb as he looks. He clearly has the ability to communicate, and he had formed these thoughts all on his own. This is one of the rare cases where I felt like they got the case right in every regard. 10 years for Gypsy is fair.
Yes.
She rehabilitated herself very nicely after prison. Well, she was in prison. She's married, for God's sakes. Nicholas, life in prison. I mean, if you have the physical capacity, the mental capacity to carry out a physical crime like that, perhaps you belong in prison for the rest of your life. I don't know. And it's not the result of like you're defending like a loved one or something like that. I don't know. I could see myself doing something like that if it was like, hey, somebody hurt my daughter or like did something terrible to my daughter. I could see losing my mind in that regard. But in the name of love,
no.
Like, give me a break. Oh.
No. There was no excuse.
So what do you think? Dynamic, Gypsy versus Nicholas. How much blame do you attribute to Gypsy versus how much you attribute to Nicholas?
Do I need to talk about percentages?
You don't have to talk about shit. You could say whatever was in your heart. Just like, what do you think about Gypsy? What do you think about Nicholas in this case? Do you have sympathy for both? Do you have sympathy for one and not the other? What are your thoughts?
I think I do have sympathy for both. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I think this was just a relationship that kind of fed each other the wrong way.
Yeah.
And yes, she's to blame on some things, but she was in this bubble. Like she just didn't know anything better. She was naive. She was not mature. She wanted to get out. I don't blame her for what she did, because in that moment, I think in her mind, that was the only way out.
Yeah.
And for him, I think he just found somebody to be able to like live his fantasy. And because either, I mean, I'm not gonna, I don't know enough about autism or anything like that, but I think his evil, I guess,
Victor.
yes, part Victor or whatever made him think that he had this evil vampire inside of him or double personality. Because I mean, we haven't talked about if he has any other diagnosis.
Schizophrenia, I think,
Yes.
was one that was proposed.
Yes,
Things like
something like that. So in that regard, I don't blame him too much because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think he's more guilty than her. I think he had maybe more
definitely
opportunity to stop like everything, but both of them, I think they had their excuses too as to why they ended up where they ended up. Like, it's.
I'll tell you what. With there's only been there hasn't been very many documented clinical diagnoses of multiple personality disorder. There was one on a Netflix documentary that I watched a couple years ago, when I was in Big Bear with my wife, where this guy had like 17 personalities and he was speaking like different languages and it was legitimate. But then it turns out, that was just gibberish. And it was actually, he was making it all up. It was like, but he had like severe trauma and all of these things. But the fact that there was 17 different people legitimately living in him was not really a thing. It was conjured in the traumatized brain of this individual. I don't know anything about his history, how he grew up, and I'll reserve judgment on it. But I just think they got it right. I think they got it right. As far as Gypsy, she is married. She had been dating all along. She's had a very vibrant dating history in prison. She had a fiance and she got dumped by that fiance. And she met this new guy, and we talked about him. There's red flags all around regarding him. I would have wished, she's been out since December 20th, about a month and a half now. I would have wished that she would have just experienced life by herself in the company of loving and caring people that are truly have her best interest at heart, as opposed to, now I'm going to be married to this guy that has demands of his own, and he wants to have kids with her and all of this stuff. And that is so ill advised. They had talked about on that documentary about them getting the marriage annulled. They didn't. They're still married as far as I know to this day. So who knows what'll be with that? But
Are they still together though?
As far as I'm aware, I haven't heard any updates on that. There was some false reporting that they did get the marriage annulled, or Gypsy wanted out of the marriage. It was emails that she had sent to family members, but she kind of quashed that. They are together and living however they're living. Good luck to them, man. But I just wish she didn't do that, because she's got so much growing and maturing to do. She needs to learn how to live free. She spent all of her life confined to something.
Yes.
Dee
Dee, and then prison.
Nicholas, prison, and now this new husband of hers. And so that wraps up our coverage of the Gypsy Rose case. We may or may not do a follow-up episode on what's going on with Nicholas. If there's anything startling that comes out, we may cover it. You guys let me know what you want us to cover, but I think that for the time being, I think we're going to be moving on, per your votes, to whether or not our Nicholas, Nicole Kessinger, is an accomplice in the murder of the Christopher Watts case, in the murder of his wife and his two baby daughters, an unborn child, Nico. That's on the horizon. There's other cases, but I think that we're probably primed to do that one next. And if you guys have other requests, desires, maybe I'll put up another poll. But it looks like right now we're doing the Nicole Kessinger thing. That's going to be a crazy one. I've been hesitating to do that case for a long time, but I think now is the time. We're going to hit that one. But before we do that, I think, Ileana, it is time to bring in Purple Rain.
Okay.